Hello, welcome to Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Rochelle Harrison-Pless. Thanks very much for joining us. Coming up, a morale boost for hundreds of French forces in Niger. President Emmanuel Macron meets troops to spread some holiday cheer with the help of the chef from the Elysée Palace to whip up an early Christmas feast. Breathing new life into discarded everyday objects and transforming them into works of art. We meet Malian designer Cheick Diallo, whose unique creations are taking the contemporary art world by storm. And from a disputed presidential vote rerun in Kenya to a power grab in Zimbabwe ending 33 years of Mugabe rule. We recap the African stories that hit the headlines in 2017. Good to have you with us. French forces in Niger are set to receive an early Christmas present, a festive dinner with President Emmanuel Macron at the head of the table. The French leader is there to show support for the international troops fighting jihadists in the restive Sahel desert as part of Operation Barkhane. France is leading counter-terrorism efforts in the region and is keen to encourage other African countries to take a more prominent role in the fight. Meanwhile, Macron met the president of Niger to talk about other issues topping the agenda, including the migrant crisis and human trafficking. Take a listen to Macron speaking earlier.
Since 2014, Operations Serval and then Barkhane have made significant gains against the enemy. Yes, the terrorist groups are still present, but they're no longer strong enough to be a significant force capable of rattling a country like they were in 2013. This adversary has now been contained. He has been weakened. He has been divided. Ground has been retaken with your help.
Well, our reporter Shona Bhattacharya is in Niamey with more details on Macron's visit.
President Macron is here in Niger for several reasons. One of them is to wish a Merry Christmas to the troops. It's a French tradition for presidents to wish a Merry Christmas for troops stationed abroad. This time, though, Macron has chosen Niger also to show his political support to President Mahamadou Issoufou, who is on the forefront of the fight against terror. The President Macron insisted heavily on several points, one of which was the importance of development in the region. As you know, Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world. Here, the gross national product is just barely 10 billion euros a year. They also have a very high illiteracy rate. Girls in particular, only 17% of girls are literate here, and it's one of the main things. And then another final point, he insisted on the 3 points: the Barkhane, Operation Barkhane, the MINUSMA UN forces, and the G5 Sahel forces to fight terrorism in the region.
Our Shona Bhattacharya reporting there. Liberia's presidential runoff vote will go ahead next Tuesday as planned. On Friday, the Supreme Court rejected a request by the governing Unity Party to delay the vote, claiming the Electoral Commission had not followed an earlier court order to clean up irregularities in the electoral roll. Now, jostling for the country's top job are former football star George Weah and Vice President Joseph Boakai. Next week's face-off comes after Mr. Weah won the first round in October but failed to secure an outright majority. Next, in Cameroon, a colleague from our sister station RFI is free after spending more than 2 years behind bars. Correspondent Ahmed Abba was acquitted on Thursday by a court in Yaoundé. This after he was charged in April with laundering the proceeds of terrorist acts. Abba was arrested in July 2015 while researching the Boko Haram insurgency. Now, from old tyres and soft drink cans to bottle tops, discarded objects given new life. Malian designer Cheick Diallo is making waves with his unique furniture crafted from recycled materials. Now, he may not be a household name, but for those in the contemporary art world, he's a rising star, with his pieces popping up in galleries from Paris to New York. Our correspondent Anthony Fouchard went to meet him at his Bamako studio.
In an open-air junkyard in the heart of Bamako Old Town, there is an abundance of scrap metal. There are lots of old car parts from Europe. Designer Cheick Diallo takes these and transforms them into show-stopping pieces of furniture. He calls the concept return to sender.
We revived them. They came here to die, this is their cemetery. But we found a solution to bring them back to life. We rework things that come from Europe. We redefine them as everyday objects.
When he's not looking for raw material, Cheick Diallo is in his studio. He's quickly changed into a smock. A last-minute order has arrived. He's got to get it ready by tonight.
An armchair takes about 4 days. Once you've done the structure, the anti-corrosive paint and the braiding. To do that in 24 hours is a real test for the style.
Seydou is the oldest weaver to work for Cheick Diallo. He is the person who draws together the threads and materials.
I used to weave traditional chairs on the side of the road to earn enough money to eat. It was just like any old job, really. But today I have a calling. It's really become an art form.
In Stockholm, in Paris and in London, Cheick Diallo's creations, especially his armchairs, have been exhibited in some of the most beautiful galleries in the world.
I think I'd like to get my hands on one of those armchairs. Right, and to wrap up this year's final Eye on Africa, Simon Harding takes a look back at the biggest stories from across the continent, the moments that made headlines in 2017.
After 23 years in power, Yahya Jammeh loses the presidential elections in Gambia and is replaced by Adama Barrow. At first, Jammeh accepts the result, but then has a change of heart and in the end is exiled from the country. 6 weeks later in Eastern Africa, a United Nations report states that the humanitarian situation in Sudan is the worst crisis on the continent. The conditions of refugees are critical. Over 60% of them are children. Many of them often die of starvation in inhumane circumstances. In August, Rwanda once again elects Paul Kagame as president for his third 7-year mandate. 2 years earlier, a constitutional referendum had been approved, allowing Kagame to run for another term in office. The same month in Burkina Faso, armed men opened fire on a cafe in the capital Ouagadougou. 18 people are killed, most of them tourists. 2017 was also the year when a new country appeared in Africa, Namibia. US President Donald Trump wanted to praise Namibia, but in front of the entire world ridiculed himself by inventing a whole new state.
By the leaders of Côte d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Ghana, Guinea, Namibia, Nigeria, Senegal, Uganda.
Long live Namibia. September was a particularly fragile month for Kenya. After a first election on the 8th of August, the Kenyan Supreme Court annulled the results which designated Uhuru Kenyatta winner and ordered a rerun on October 26. But the opposition leader Raila Odinga refused to stand again. Kenyatta was elected president for the second time with a crushing majority. During the autumn of 2017, Zimbabwe put an end to the Mugabe era. After 33 years at the head of the country, the president was forced to resign following a military takeover.
I, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, in terms of Section 96, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, hereby formally tender my resignation.
Backed by the army, Emmerson Mnangagwa is chosen as the next head of state. The month of December saw South Africa's ruling ANC party pick millionaire businessman Cyril Ramaphosa as their new leader. He is now widely expected to succeed President Jacob Zuma when the elections come round in 2019.
Well, that's it for this edition of Eye on Africa. We'll be back in 2018. In the meantime, happy holidays and stay tuned to France 24. Thomas Waterhouse is back with more news in just a few moments.